I had told myself the whole long ride down from the high country that the Vance place would be gone, sold for back taxes, or burned, or just blown flat the way the wind flattens everything out in that valley if you give it 11 years and turn your back. I told myself that because it was easier than the other thing, which was that she might still be there, and that I would have to look at her and account for where I had been. I came down the wash at evening with the dust gone gold around the horse's legs, and the first thing I saw was that the creek was running. That stopped me cold. Coyote Wash had never run, not the whole of my boyhood. It was a dry scar in the ground that you crossed without thinking. Now there was a thread of water in it catching the low light, and a stone-lined channel guiding that water uphill toward the homestead the way no creek runs on its own. And I knew before I saw a soul that somebody had gone down into the rock and found the spring under it, and made the desert do something it did not want to do. Then I came around the cottonwoods and saw her. She was up on the well housing with a wrench in her hand and her sleeves shoved past the elbow, and she did not see me at first. 11 years had put a few hard lines around her eyes and taken the girl out of how she stood, and she was leaner and browner and looked like a woman who had stopped apologizing to anybody for anything. I had ridden 2,000 miles imagining this, and in every version of it she ran to me. She did not run to me. She finished the turn of the wrench, set it down where she would find it again, and looked at me the way you look at weather coming. "Eli Crane," she said, not glad, not angry, just placing me the way you'd name a thing you'd long since put away. "Mari," I said, and my voice came out cracked. "You're alive, then?" "Mostly." She wiped her hands on her trousers. Behind her the windmill turned slow and chickens muttered, and somewhere a milk cow shifted its weight against a rail, and the whole place hummed with the low everyday racket of a spread that worked. I had left a dying patch of dirt and one sick old man. I had come back to this, and she had done it, all of it, alone. "My father's dead," she said, "for years, in case you came to ask him for anything." "I didn't come to ask anybody for anything." "Then what did you come for?" I had no answer that would hold weight, so I gave her the only true thing. I didn't know where else home was. For a long moment she just looked at me, and the water ran in the channel she had cut, and I understood that I had walked back into the middle of a life that had gone on perfectly well without me, and that I was the one out of place here now, not her. "You can water that horse," she finally said, "and you can sleep in the hay barn tonight because I won't turn an animal out at dark even if it's carrying you. In the morning you'll tell me the truth about where you were, and then you'll ride on." She climbed down off the well housing. I held this place against the bank, the drought, and half the men in Sable Bend who figured a woman couldn't. I'm not about to lose my footing now to a ghost who finally decided to show up. She walked to the house and did not look back, and I stood there in the gold dust feeling every one of those 11 years land on me at once. I will tell you what the truth was, since I told it to her over coffee the next morning at her own table with my hat in my lap like a boy. I had ridden off to the Sutton County range where the spring we were promised, because the cattlemen were paying $40 a month to any man who could sit a horse and shoot, and $40 a month was more than the Crane place would clear in a year, and I was 22 and a fool, and I thought I would come back rich enough to deserve her. I sent one letter. Then the war got into me the way those things do. It stopped being about money. It got to be about the men beside me, and then about staying alive, and then it was just years, one bleeding into the next, a hired gun riding for whoever fed him, until I woke up one morning in a cold camp in Montana and could not remember the last thing I had done that I was proud of. So I quit. I put down the work I'd been doing and I rode south, and the only direction south meant anything was here. $40 a month, she said when I was done. She turned her cup a slow quarter turn on the wood. I dug the creek out for less than that. My father couldn't lift a shovel by then, so I did it myself, a foot a day, 2 years until I hit the seep under the caprock. The whole town came out to watch me fail. She lifted her eyes. I didn't fail. "No," I said, "you didn't. You could have written more than once." I know it. You could have come back any of those 11 years. I know that too. She nodded slowly like a woman closing a ledger. Then we understand each other. She stood and gathered the cups. There's a man named Harlan Pace bought the old Crane place and 3 sections besides while you were off being paid to shoot strangers. He wants my water. Every dry month he wants it worse. So I won't pretend I couldn't use a second pair of hands through the calving and the haying. I could. But I'll hire them, Eli. I won't be rescued, and I won't be courted out of my own grief by a man who turns up because he ran out of road. You want to stay, you stay as help. Wages and the bunk, same as I'd give a stranger. And the first time you talk to me like I owe you something for the privilege of standing on the land I saved, you're gone. I looked at the strong brown hands stacking those cups, and the channel of water running outside the window that she had pulled up out of solid rock with her own back. And I did the only wise thing I had done in 11 years. Wages and the bunk, I said. Yes, ma'am. So I stayed on as hired help on the land I had once been promised to share, and there is a particular kind of medicine in that. It humbles a man clean down to the floor of himself, and a man like I had become needed exactly that. She worked harder than any 2 hands I ever rode with, and she worked smart, which is rarer. She had the spread laid out so the water from the seep ran first to the house garden, then to the stock tanks, then out to the lower hay ground. Every drop counted twice before it sank. She kept books in a tight, clean hand. She knew every cow by the set of its ears. The men in Sable Bend who'd come out to watch her fail had mostly come around to respect, the grudging kind, but there were still a few who could not stand it, the fact of her, a woman who'd done it. I learned fast which ones, because they were the ones Harlan Pace had in his pocket. I met Pace at the end of my first week. He rode up the lane on a tall gray with 2 men behind him, the way a man rides when he wants you to count his men. He was soft in the middle and hard in the eye. And he talked to Mari the way you'd talk to a child, you'd run out of patience with. Miss Vance, he said, not getting down, I'll make the offer one more time, fair and in front of a witness. He glanced at me like I was a fence post. 1,200 for the homestead and the water rights both. That's more than this dirt is worth, and you know it. You take it. You walk away a woman of means instead of a woman who broke her back for nothing. I broke my back for water that runs, Mari said, which is the one thing your 3 sections don't have, Mr. Pace, and we both know that's the whole of your offer. It isn't 1,200 for my land. It's 1,200 for your cattle's lives. She stepped up closer to his horse than most men would have, and did not flinch from it. The answer's the same as last spring and the spring before. No, now you're on my lane and I'd like it back. Pace's jaw worked. His eyes cut to me again. You hire gun hands now, Miss Vance, that's a new thing. He shovels, she said, same as everyone here. I held my tongue, because she had not asked me to do otherwise, and because I understood for the first time in my life that there is more steel in a person who refuses to raise their voice than in any man who ever leaned on a pistol. Pace turned the gray and took his 2 men back down the lane, and the dust of them hung a long time in the still air. He'll come back wrong, I said when they were gone. He always comes back wrong, she said. He's been coming back wrong for 4 years. I'm still here. She picked her shovel up off the rail. Don't go borrowing a war, Eli. You've had enough of those. This one's mine, and it's fought with the deed and the land office, not with your gun. I had spent 11 years learning that most problems could be solved with a gun, and that the solving cost you a piece of your soul each time. She was teaching me, without meaning to, the harder arithmetic, that the problems worth solving could not be solved that way at all. The drought tightened all through that summer, and we worked it shoulder to shoulder, and somewhere in the working, the 11 years began to wear thin between us. It was not soft and it was not sudden. It came in the practical moments. A heifer down in a dry gully at midnight and the 2 of us in the dark with a rope and our boots braced, hauling her out, and Mari laughing once short, surprised, like she'd forgotten she could when the cow came loose and sat us both down in the mud. It came when I'd reshingled the south side of the barn without being told, and she stood looking at it a long while and finally said, "You always could see what wanted doing," which from her was a whole sonnet. It came in the way she stopped saying "ride on" and started saying things like "next week we'll cut the lower field," putting me into the shape of the days to come without seeming to notice she'd done it. One evening on the porch with the heat finally breaking, she said, not looking at me, "I waited 2 years. I want you to know that. I'm not ashamed of it. I waited 2 years and I cried over a man who was off getting paid, and then I decided I was worth more than the waiting and I picked up a shovel." She turned the cup in her hands the way she did. "I don't want you thinking, if anything comes of this, that you came back to a woman who'd been pinning at the window. I built a life, a good one. You'd be coming into something I made, Eli, not the other way round." "I know it," I said. "That's the only way I'd want to come into anything ever again." She looked at me then, full on in the last of the light. "That's the right answer," she said quietly. "Took you 11 years and a shooting war to learn it, but it's the right answer." And she went inside and did not ask me to follow, and I sat on her porch in the dark, a happy man for the first time since I was 22. Pace made his real move in the dry heart of August, and he made it the way cowards make moves, with paper and a lie instead of out in the open. A man rode out from the Sable Bend land office with a county clerk's seal and a face full of apology, and he told Mari that a filing had been entered against her water rights, that an old survey, dug up and conveniently reread, showed the seep under the caprock lay across the line, on land Pace had bought, that her creek, by the new reading, was his, that she'd have 30 days to answer in the county seat or lose the water by default, and a homestead without water in that valley was worth exactly nothing, which Pace knew, which was the whole black design of it. I felt the old thing rise in me when I heard it, the thing that had kept me alive 11 years and cost me everything else. I knew where Pace slept. I knew I could end his scheming in a single hard night and be gone before the law cared. I even stood up out of my chair. "Sit down, Eli," Mari said without heat, reading me clean. "I know that look. Every man who's ever wanted to help me has worn it. Sit down. He's stealing your life with a forged survey, Mari. And I'll take it back with a true one." She was already pulling her father's old strongbox out from under the bed, and from it a sheaf of papers gone soft at the folds. "I'm not a fool, and my father wasn't either. When he filed this homestead in '68, he had the spring surveyed and the rights recorded separate, because even then men like Pace existed. I have the original plat. I have the witness signatures of 2 men who walked the line, one of them dead, but his mark is sworn before a judge, and the other's old Tomas Reyes, who herds sheep up on the mesa and has lived here longer than the county has. Pace has a rereading bought with whiskey. I have the record." She squared the papers on the table. "I don't need a gun, Eli. I need a clean shirt, the early stage to the county seat, and a witness who'll ride up the mesa and bring Tomas down to testify. That last part, that I could use your hands for." So that is what I did. I did not ride out into the dark to kill a man. I rode up the mesa in the honest light of morning, and I found old Tomas Reyes among his sheep, and I treated him with the respect a man earns who has kept his flock and his word in one place for 40 years, and I asked him plainly, and he looked at me a long while and said, "Marable Vance is the only one in that valley who ever rode up here to ask after my water instead of trying to take it. I'll come." And he came down off that mesa beside me, slow on his old mule, the deciding witness in a fight I had wanted to settle with a pistol and could not have. The hearing was in the county courthouse, with the ceiling fans not moving and half of Sable Bend crowded in to watch, the same town that had come out to watch her fail at the creek. Pace had a lawyer in a good coat, and the bought survey, and a smile that lasted right up until Mari laid her father's original plat on the judge's bench. Recorded and sealed 8 years before Pace ever owned a foot of that valley. And then old Tomas Reyes stood up in his clean Sunday shirt and told the judge in his slow, careful English exactly where he had walked the line as a young man, and exactly where the spring lay, which was square in the center of the Vance homestead and always had been. It did not take long after that. The judge had no love for a reread survey against a recorded plat and a living witness, and he said so from the bench, and he threw Pace's filing out and warned him from the chair that the court took a poor view of men who tried to steal with paper what they couldn't buy fair. Pace went out of that courtroom smaller than he came in, and he never troubled the Vance water again, and within 2 years he'd sold out and gone, and that was the end of him as far as my story cares. Mari folded her father's plat back along its soft creases and put it away, and outside on the courthouse steps in the white noonlight she let out a long breath, and for just a moment I saw the cost of all of it on her, the years, the shovel, the doubting town, the holding on a loan, and then she put it away too, the way she put everything away, and squared her shoulders. "Well," she said, "that's done." "You did that," I said. "All I did was fetch a sheep man." "You fetched the right one, and you didn't go shoot anybody, which a year ago I don't think you could have kept from doing." She looked at me sidelong, and there was something in it that had not been there since we were young. "Maybe there's hope for you, Eli Crane." We were married that fall, in the cottonwoods down by the creek that ran because she had made it run, with Tomas Reyes and a handful of the valley folk who'd finally come fully around to standing witness. I want to be plain about how it was, because it was not the way these stories usually go, with the woman saved and the man the hero of it. She kept the deed in her own name. It says Marable Vance on it to this day, and below it now it says Crane too, but hers is first because hers was always first, and I would not have it any other way. She kept her own name and her own books and her own say in every matter of the place, and what I came into was a partnership, the full half of which I had to earn over years and was glad to. I was not the man who rescued her. I was the man fortunate enough that she let me help carry a thing she had already lifted alone. We built the home up from what she'd made, added rooms as the years gave us reason to, ran the spread together through good seasons and dry ones, and the water never failed us, because she dug it deep enough that it never could. There were children in time, and they grew up knowing the story straight, with no parts left out, that their mother dug a creek out of solid rock with her own back while their father was off shooting strangers for $40 a month, and that he came home with nothing but a horse and a debt of years to pay, and that she let him pay it. They are not ashamed of either half of it. Neither am I. I am an old man now, and I have had a long time to think on what a thing is worth. I rode 11 years thinking I had to come home rich enough to deserve a woman like Marable Vance. I had it exactly backward. There is no being rich enough to deserve a person. There is only showing up and staying and doing the work that wants doing and learning, slow and humble and late if that's the only way you can learn it, that the strongest thing you will ever stand beside is a person who needed no rescuing and chose you anyway. The creek still runs. She still calls it hers. And every evening of my life I have been grateful she let me sit on her porch and watch it run beside her.